local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused.
To all the councillors, are we all present? I think Andrew's just happened coming on. I think we're all there, aren't we? Except for Nick Dakin. I can't see Nick. Councillor Dakin, are you there or not?
I know he's planning to be there, Mayor. I was talking to him earlier today.
Yep. So was I. But anyway, it's gone the time, so we'll start the meeting. We'll open it with no apologies that I have, and I welcome you all, councillors, staff, and also those that will be listening. Declaration of interest. Any declaration of interest from the councillors? No, there's no hands up. Confirmation of minutes. Somebody happy to move the minutes of the meeting held the 14th of May? Councillor Spencer.
Happy to second.
And Deputy Mayor. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Any against? No, that is carried. We have no deputations, no petitions, no community reports. And on public question time, just on the questions on notice, I do want to add a statement to what is in their response to 8.1.1. So I think Leanne was going to read something out first. Were you, Leanne Purchase?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to note for the minutes that President of the Tasmanian Ratepayers Association, Inc. will be inserted in brackets after Mr Morell's name at item 8.1.1. Thank you.
And we apologise that was missed out. So further to the response, I want to add the following. I would like to add, for some time, the Council has been working on several proposals in respect to higher order uses for underutilised sites in our CBD. It was intended to make an announcement on these proposals prior to today's Council meeting. However, there are commercial and confidence negotiations still occurring in respect to these proposals, and unfortunately we have no announcement to make at this time. We can advise the full details will be released publicly as soon as reasonably possible. Thank you. Then we move on to public questions without notice.
Thank you, Mayor. We have questions from Jim Dickinson of Riverside. Question 1. Most, if not all, councillors would be aware I live in Riverside, but nevertheless have a deep ongoing interest and regard for the development of Launceston, especially nowadays with the catchphrase to make Launceston one of the best regional cities of the world. So it is with great dismay and concern to see air conditioning equipment quite strongly visually projecting above the roof line of the brand new Verge Hotel. This totally destroys the roofline, the skyline, the streetscape of an otherwise reasonable new city development. Without going into a lengthy philosophical preamble, quite simply, how could this have been allowed to happen?
Thank you. And the answer is the endorsed plans for the Verge Hotel show the plant and equipment screened from view. The development is still under construction and the screening is yet to be completed. Should the plant and equipment screening differ from the approved plans, Council will contact the developer to investigate further.
Question 2 from Mr. Dickinson. What is the current position regarding the redevelopment of 14 to 16 St George's Square? Walking past recently, it was noticed the property is in a grossly untidy condition, a disgrace to the city and obviously to the attractive St George's Square. The barrier fencing is not secure, so the property is open to vandalism. What attention is Council giving to this property?
Yeah, the answer is all required planning permits have been issued for the redevelopment of the site. The security and maintenance of the property is the responsibility of the owner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Question 3 from Mr. Dickinson. I note in today's The Examiner, Council, with financial help from the Coalition, is to transform the Albert Hall into a cultural and convention centre. In keeping with the notion to make Launceston one of the best regional cities of the world, the upgrade must include the works to make the Albert Hall a truly great concert hall. Are plans for a significant concert hall included in the feasibility study?
Thanks, Leanne. The feasibility study includes a broad range of options for Albert Hall to improve its functionality, which includes improving its capacity to host concerts.
Thank you, Mayor. The next questions are from Mr. Ray Norman of Trevallyn. Question 1. Given the looming financial crisis, the diminishing prospects for a post-COVID-19 snapback, and the impending major shift in economic circumstances facing regional cities, A, will Council make a concerted effort to consult local experts such as ratepayers, young people, entrepreneurs and others when framing Council's 2020-2021 budget? And B, consistent with that, will Council empanel a citizens' assembly to explore cost savings and the prioritisation of capital works looking forward to 5 years and beyond? And C, consistent with that, will Council explore the options available and that are being canvassed by universities and large corporations to recontextualise corporate salary levels and job descriptions in the context of local government in order to more equitably meet the rapidly emerging challenges ahead?
Thanks, Leanne. Now, I note that, as in past, Mr. Ray Norman has asked 3 questions, but all split up into 3 parts. In future, we will just answer 3 questions. I think it's a way of getting around the rules, which is that we have allow 3 questions, and in the future, if there's one divided into 3, that will be the 3 that we will take read. So in answer to that, we'll do it for this one, but in future, we'll go back to the 3 questions per ratepayer. So the response is consultation regarding the 2021 budget is not proposed to occur due to the COVID-19 related time restrictions. The Tomorrow Together program is our tool for community engagement. A response regarding citizens' assemblies for community engagement has previously been provided. And part C, this question has been answered at a previous council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Question 2. Given the rapidly changing circumstances, economic, cultural and social, will Council now be proactive in engaging with local experts in regard to resetting planning and development priorities and imperatives relative to A, precinct management, taking in the context of new and emerging economic opportunities and threats, and B, consistent with that, will Council establish a series of citizen reference groups to proactively inform Council's strategic planning? And C, consistent with that, will Council proactively engage with social media, video conferencing, etc. in a 21st century context to more effectively engage with both constituents and extended communities relative to planning?
Thank you, Leanne. And the response is A, the Council is currently reviewing its annual plan and budget priorities and will release details in June this year. B, no, the Council's strategic plan was reviewed in 2019 and ongoing engagement with the community is undertaken through the Tomorrow Together engagement program focused on particular themes. This will continue in 2021 financial year. And C, the City of Launceston leads the industry in Tasmania in best practice use of multi-platform mediums to proactively engage with its community and stakeholders, which we are committed to continuing to do, including constantly identifying new ways to make it easier for people to access information and provide input to the wide variety of services and planning that the Council undertakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Question 3 from Mr. Norman. In the context of the dynamic changes now increasingly evident in the ways museum and art galleries engaged with exponentially diversifying communities of ownership and interest and are proactively seeking new operational models, A, will Council as QVMag trustees establish a series of citizen advice networks drawn from the institution's community of ownership and interest to better inform strategic planning, policy reviewing, publishing priorities and marketing? And likewise, B, will Council as QVMag trustees initiate an expert network to provide financial guidance and overviewing relative to emerging and changing post-COVID-19 circumstances? And likewise, C, will Council as QVMag trustees establish a College of Associates drawn from the institution's community of ownership and interest to promote and facilitate research and publishing in a 21st century context?
Thanks, Leanne. The future governance model for QVMag is an evolving discussion. The structure and membership of any future governing body will be determined by what QVMag needs to grow, prosper, and be relevant to our evolving community. Subcommittees will be a matter for further consideration once the governing body is established. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The next questions are from Mr. Lionel Morell, President of the Tasmanian Ratepayers Association Incorporated, Launceston. On behalf of Tasmanian Ratepayers Association Incorporated, I asked 3 questions at the meeting held on 14 May 2020 regarding properties at 118 to 122 Brisbane Street, formerly Birchall's and adjacent retail shop, and 41 to 45 Patterson Street car park. You responded, a public announcement will be made in respect to these questions prior to the next council meeting, and accordingly Anthea Rooney, committee clerk, wrote to me on 21 May providing the information from the May 14 meeting. Public records disclose that on the day of the council meeting, 14 May, in fact City of Launceston Council settled the purchase of the properties at 118 to 122 Brisbane Street, Launceston. As this had occurred on the day of the meeting, why was this truthful fact not disclosed to me and the ratepayers of Launceston? There has been no public announcement made as you said there would be, and today is the next council meeting. There is nothing noted in the agenda concerning these matters. Can you explain why that you as General Manager has not been open, honest and transparent in your communications with your ratepayers?
Thanks, Leanne. These matters have been addressed in the revised answer which has now been provided to the questions posed at the previous council meeting, which I read out after 8.1.1. Thank you, Leanne. That's all for questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We then move on to announcements by the Mayor. I don't think I have anything to announce this time. So councillor reports. Any councillor reports? No hands going up. All silent. We'll move on then. Questions by councillors. Question from Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, I just guess just following on from the question from Mr. Dickinson just regarding 14 to 16 St George's Square. I guess like him, I'm concerned at the disrepair that it looks like from the road. I appreciate that they've got planning approval on their DAs and things like that. I presume that we have no control over the speed in which the development takes place due to the fact that DA has been approved and I guess they've got their 2-year timeline to actually make that, to establish that development. Is that the case? Because to me, it would be great if we did have some action we could take to sort of force the owner to progress the matters that she's been approved to do.
CEO or?
It's certainly my understanding, Mayor, is they've got 2 years, and Leanne can correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 years to substantially commence the development, so they don't have to have it completed within 2 years, unless there's requirements in the permit that place time restrictions on it. So, no, these are ones that we really just need to work with the property owners as best we can to understand their time frames, and I'm sure that we will, given that the matter's now being raised again through council meetings.
Supplementary question then, Mayor. Just, I guess that does that show a flaw in the planning scheme to the extent that we have a situation where there's a substantial development that could see a really undeveloped property for a period of time, and is that something that we should be looking to sort of strengthen our planning rules to ensure that there is substantial, where it's street facing or whatever? I'm not quite sure what the method of doing it is, but it just seems to me that some of these ones just slip by to the keeper, and I guess we look bad, even though I appreciate we don't actually have much control over it. But is there anything that we can do within the new state planning scheme to try and improve that situation?
Look, I don't necessarily think this is a flaw in the planning system in terms of it. That's the way that permits have been issued and enacted for a good history in Tasmania. We do have legislative framework around nuisance and around the other types of issues that we can use where there is an offence occurring. But in terms of where a development is going slower than we would have liked, we've never really as a council had control over that, and probably nor should we. But where it is actually impinging and causing a nuisance or causing an offence, we've certainly got powers to be able to deal with those type of matters.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Is that general question?
Councillor Spencer?
I've just got a couple, Mayor, thank you. Is there any way, if ratepayers pay all in one hit, they can get a discount, or 1 or 2%? I noticed some other councils give you a discount if you pay all your rates at once.
Yeah, no, that's the same for us, Councillor. I might defer that to Louise to be able to give you the specifics.
Right.
Councillor Spencer, I'm sorry, I'm not across the specifics of the policy, but I do understand that there is a discount for upfront payment.
We'll take that on an answer provided in the next council agenda.
The second question is, QV Mag annual report, I actually went through it, and it doesn't really state the full breakdown of wages, insurance, maintenance and repairs. Just wonder if Louise or Paul could get that to me, please.
Mr Mayor, so I've got that information. I've been waiting for the councillor to contact me to just understand specifically what he needed. So, because you asked that at the last council meeting, so correct, I've got that sitting on my desk waiting for you to sort of come in and have a talk to me. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My question is to the CEO, just regarding the commencement of National Reconciliation Week yesterday. Is the council, I understand, in these pandemic times that there aren't the same events that there normally would be, but the council would normally have displayed the Aboriginal flag during Reconciliation Week. Is that true? And do we have any capacity to do that?
That has been done, I understand.
It has?
Yes, at our properties, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it flying this morning.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Finlay and Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions? We'll move on then with committee reports, the audit panel meeting. Someone happy to move? Council receive the report.
Happy to move, Mayor.
Councillor McKenzie, is there a seconder? Councillor Alan Harris, is it? Is that what the hand up's for?
Councillor Spencer, is it?
Oh, Alan Harris, I had, but it doesn't matter. Paul Spencer.
I'll do it, yep.
Councillor Harris, thank you. Councillor McKenzie, wish to speak to it?
Look, I think the details are there, Mayor. There's probably some items I'll speak to later on other items, but not this one.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Nothing to say further.
Any other councillor wish to speak? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye.
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 Any against, say no. So that's carried unanimously. We move on to 14.1, Council Workshop Report. Do we have a mover for those?
Happy to move, Mayor, Deputy.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. Is there a seconder?
Happy to move. Happy to second, Mayor.
Councillor McKenzie, thank you. Do you wish to speak to it, Deputy Mayor?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor McKenzie?
No.
Any councillor wish to speak to it? I'll put the motion. Those in favour say aye.
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 Any against say no. The ayes have it. That is carried. Then we move on to 17.1, the Queen Victoria Museum and Art Gallery.
Happy to move, Mayor.
Councillor McKenzie moved. Is there a seconder?
Happy to second, Mayor, Deputy.
Deputy, thank you. Councillor McKenzie, you wish to speak to it?
Oh, look, I'd just like to commend the report. I think it's a very detailed report showing what's been going on at the QV Mag, and I guess, like many, seeing this creative arts or the QV Mag item on the agenda for many years, and not much actually populated in over time. And I guess that this is great, and I hope that we might see this on a more regular basis, information like this, because I think it's certainly very helpful for us and the public to see what actually is happening out at the QV Mag. I guess the only thing I can't see in there is potentially any monetisation, and that may not be appropriate for this particular report anyway, of how we can actually generate more income through the operations of the QV Mag. I think some of those may well lead to that sort of thing, but it's not evident from the written word. But I think there's some good initiatives going on through there, and I think it keeps us and the community well informed.
Thank you. Deputy?
Thanks, Mayor. Yep, I think this too is a good baseline of where we can get to with regard to communication flow from our QV Mag. There's lots of excitement around the new manager of museum operations, and we look forward to some of those strategies and implementation of some of the plans coming to bear fruit in the not too distant future. And I would encourage QV Mag to continue doing what they're doing, engaging with our community, being relevant, and also reporting through this and other means. It's important, and the inclusion of the different volunteer groups that are adjuncts to the structure incorporated today, and obviously the opportunity for them to communicate to us more regularly is appreciated, and we look forward to lots of these plans and lots of these initiatives coming to fruition. It's pleasing to note the daily meetings where things are being kept on track, but also the innovation. It has felt like for a while that we've been setting things up at the QV Mag, and obviously COVID has delayed the implementation of some of them, but it also sounds like it's also been a new opportunity to find new innovative ways of reaching audiences. So let's keep going. This is a good bare minimum. Let's continue to grow, innovate, and develop audiences and funding.
Thank you, Deputy. Any other councillor wish to speak?
I might just say something.
Councillor Spencer? Yep.
Yeah, I've just seen that they're going to have open days where you can get a tour at the art museum. I think that's a good idea. And I'd like to probably see tours at the Intermay site. I went through there a few months ago, and I was amazed to see the old train. I was very interested in it, but it'd be good to get commentary of it. And I think we could promote that a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor McKenzie, wish to close?
No, Mayor.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour, say aye.
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 Any against? That's unanimous. All said aye. Thank you. That's carried. So we go to 18.1, Launceston Flood Authority Report, January to March. We have a mover.
I'm happy to move if nobody else will, Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Mackenzie, thank you for moving. Is there a seconder?
Happy to
I'll
second.
second it.
Oh, Councillor Harris just got in. Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie, you wish to speak to it?
I will speak to it, but I think that it's a good updated report. But I guess moreover, I actually had a question in relation to one of the items, and it just says under operational activities undertaken, there has been settlement along the Invermay levee between Godric Street and Invermay Road at a higher rate than expected. This will continue to be monitored. So I guess do I take from that the possible implications of this higher settlement rate, both from a budgetary point of view in filling the, in topping the levies up and so forth, and I guess moreover any failure and the risks associated with any failure potentially as a result of that. Just wouldn't mind a little bit further explanation about what that means.
Is that CEO or General Manager?
I can answer that one.
Shane?
Yeah, the settlement that's occurred is about half a metre. So we have half a metre of freeboard built into the levee. So the levees structurally are fine. It's just that they're providing a lower level of protection. And we have invested in a water-filled barrier. So we've got contingency plans should we need to raise it by half a metre. But essentially the job of raising it by half a metre means we have to strip the paths and all the topsoil and everything off the levee to reconstruct it. So that work will be undertaken in the next 5 to 10 years.
So supplementary to that, then I guess your monitoring, is probably the answer to it. But I guess half a metre is a significant fall, given that the levees were only completed in 2016. That seems reasonably significant. Are we comfortable that that half metre is not going to sort of double over a short period of time, or is that what the monitoring is designed to look at?
That's what the monitoring is designed for. It was always expected that the rate of settlement will occur quickly in the first few years and then slow down. So,
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Do you wish to speak to it?
Look, I just think otherwise, I think it's a very informative report, and I'm very pleased that we're getting those sorts of reports. I think it gives good communication to the councillors, but moreover, the public can see what's going on with the Port Authority as well.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
No further comment.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? No? Councillor Mackenzie, wish to close?
No, Mayor.
I will put the motion. Those in favour, please say yes. Aye.
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 I was going to say raise your hands, but can't all do it. And any against? So that is carried. Thank you. So we move on to 19.1, financial report to council.
This is my bailiwick again, Mayor, so I put my hand up for this.
Councillor Mackenzie move. Is there a seconder?
Happy to second that, Mayor.
Councillor Finlay? You wish to speak to it, Councillor Mackenzie?
Oh, look, I just wanted to make a comment in relation to it. I think it's explained in the report, but just to sort of highlight the fact that when you take out the financial assistance grant of $2.2 million as of the end of March, which is a timing difference, we'd be about break even, which would put us about 1.6, 1.7 ahead of budget, which I think is very important from the point of view of what happened post that with our sort of rescue package in relation to COVID-19. So I guess it put the council in a really good spot there, I guess, from the point of view of our $9 million investment in that we're somewhat offset by good performance in the first 9 months of the year. The only other thing that I just wanted to highlight in there is in the balance sheet where it says superannuation obligation, where we've got a funding amount of $1.8 million. Just noting that is, I think, based on last year, because we still haven't had any actuarial updates on what that might mean. And I guess musing through the fact that we have, just for people to understand, this is under the old defined benefit scheme where I don't think we've got any new entrants to it, and we may have had some that exit during the OAP process, but it just means that we have to top up funding where people are being paid defined amounts after they retire. And I guess my concern with that particular number is that we're in a very low interest rate environment. We've had volatile markets in regards to share markets and things like that, which underpins how much we actually have to add to that on the basis that most of those are fixed on final average salaries and indexed. that I'm hoping that we're not going to get a big shock when the actuaries do their calculations at the year end to tell us what we need to top up to meet the obligation. So I'll just put that little caveat there that's something that's still staring us. I know Nathan's trying to get some information out of the actuaries at the moment to try and determine where that's going, but that's the only thing that just concerned me a little bit in regards to just the way that the world's been trading. I also make note that the council no longer plans to borrow $4.2 million under the ALGCP, which is the interest-free loans, for another word, for the St John Street redevelopment project. I'd just like to hold that, Michael, because when we sort of look at our annual plans, we're talking about doing some stuff on the St John Street redevelopment, and I'm not sure that we won't want to access that at some stage if we can't get any grant funding in relation to that. But I'll just note that as well.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Thanks, Mayor. I've always enjoyed listening to Councillor Mackenzie's commentary, either through council meetings or through audit and financial panel. But I think what this item to council today demonstrates that for some time we've been really financially responsible. We're in a really good financial position, which has been really important given the really tough times that are going to be ahead for us. But our ability to be across these and manage our financial responsibilities are really high. And because of this strong position, it means we can make very determined action, tough but determined action over the years ahead.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Mackenzie, wish to close?
I think I've said enough.
Thank you. We'll put the motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any against? So the ayes have it. That is carried. We go on to 19.2, Chief Executive Officer's report on adjustments from 1st of April to 30th of April. Is there a mover for that?
I can, Mayor.
Councillor Mackenzie, thank you for coming. Is there a seconder?
Councillor
Finlay. Councillor Mackenzie, do you wish to speak to it?
I think it's self-explanatory what's happened there, so I'm comfortable with it. It says what it needs to say.
Councillor Finlay?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. Any other councillor wish to speak? Do you wish to close, Councillor Mackenzie?
No.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye.
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 Any against? So it's carried unanimously again. So 19.3, budget amendments.
Happy to move that again, Mayor.
Move Councillor Mackenzie. Is there a seconder?
Councillor Soward.
Councillor Soward. Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie, wish to speak to it?
Again, like the previous one, it's well explained in the document. All I could do is commend the officers for their diligence and their very clear work in relation to that matter.
Thank you. Councillor Soward?
I think Councillor Mackenzie's captured it all, but it is an important part of what we're doing, informing our community, and again, commend the officers for their work.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak to the item? Councillor Mackenzie, you wish to close?
No, Mayor.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any against, say no. So that's carried by all. So move to 19.4, progress against the annual plan actions. Is there a mover for that?
I'll move it, Mayor.
Councillor, thank you for coming. Councillor Mackenzie moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Mayor. Yep.
To Councillor Harris, was it?
Yep.
Councillor Mackenzie, you wish to speak to it?
Mayor, look, they're just, I think that the commentary is very good, and a lot of these plans, or a number of these plans, have been, I guess, deferred as a result of the COVID-19 activities, and they all make logical sense, I think, across the board. I did have some questions, so I might just, that's enough for me to talk. I might just ask a couple of questions if that's possible.
Yep, that's fine, yes.
Just going back to item strategic plan, what's it under its focus area, to develop and consistently utilise contemporary and effective community engagement processes. It says our community engagement strategy is complete and specific champion training has been undertaken with about 25 identified employees. This continues to be an ongoing basis. An updated community engagement policy and toolkit is yet to be completed. I would have thought, just questioning why that wouldn't get done, I guess during our COVID period, it'd be an ideal time to be putting that toolkit together. I appreciate officers have been pretty busy, but it just seemed to be something that I would have thought would be able to be dealt with rather than deferred. So that's a question.
Yeah, I gather that. Who'd like to answer that?
I can comment on that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Mackenzie. Work has been progressing to a point, but the focus has been on Tomorrow Together and compiling reporting on where we have got to with Tomorrow Together and planning the way forward with Tomorrow Together based on needing to review an approach in terms of the impacts of COVID, and that will certainly be reported to councillors at a future workshop in the next couple of weeks. So it's not that nothing has happened, it's more that the focus of the employees has been on Tomorrow Together rather than the toolkit development.
So just the word defer was the issue that I probably had, and whether that's an accurate statement.
So the work on that will stop now to focus on Tomorrow Together.
Okay.
So in this last period of this financial year, the focus will be on reconfiguring Tomorrow Together to ensure that we get the best benefit out of that program for the community.
Okay, thank you. My next question was in regard to strategy priority 3, which was about levels of service. It says levels of service planning stage 1, commence planning to document service levels, etc. My question is really, given what we're going through from a community perspective, is there an opportunity as part of our level of service planning to more engage our community in taking responsibility for some areas, which just enables, it might be sort of friends of a park or something like that, to deal with some aspects of it so that we can focus on the things that are really important from a council perspective to do our levels of service on, but maybe look to our community to be part of the solution to our levels of service and making sure the city is a very livable city?
Yeah, Councillor, the levels of service project will involve significant engagement with the users or the community in respect to setting those service levels. The issue that we've got at the moment is that we do require a dedicated staff to be able to, a new staff member to focus on the level of service project. It can't be done off the side of people's desks. We've been trying that for years without success. We, though, have now enacted a recruitment freeze to try and deal with the budget issues that we have in respect of managing COVID. Of course, this is a conversation we can have with council down the track in terms of if you prioritise and want us to resource that we can, but it is a significant body of work and does require a resource to be able to work meaningfully in that area. So.
Yeah, just my point was that make sure we keep that in whenever we land there, that's something that I think is important, because I think there's a real opportunity just through the way we've all come together as a community for the community to take some responsibility and some positive action in regards to some of these things.
Any other questions, Councillor Mackenzie?
Look, I have, but I'll defer and let others have a go.
Okay. Mayor? Councillor Harris, did you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you very much. Look, I wanted to thank the officers for putting this report together, and I do notice that it only goes up to the 31st of March, and obviously there are some things that happened between now and the last 2 months. And like Councillor Mackenzie, I've just got a couple of questions. Mine are regarding strategy priority 7, the UTAS development, which is shown as 60% completed. Have we been advised who the prime contractor for the development of the library on site as yet, or is that still yet to be announced?
CEO?
Look, I wouldn't like, I have been advised, but I'm not sure whether UTAS have formally advised, so I wouldn't like to say at a council meeting, but I'll seek that information from UTAS, and if they're happy to have that released, then I'll make sure that this is,
Yep, no, that's fair enough. And the other one
there's an announcement happening next week.
Oh, good. And the other question is just in regard to the traffic light signal project, which shows 75% completed. I was just wondering what that means as far as the actual number of signals that have been upgraded. on the around Launceston as such. I know we did some work, and it would just be helpful if we could understand what that means as far as which signals are now working under the new system and which ones are still on the old one. Particularly as I was wondering if it had made it out to Kings Meadows as I sit out there at the corner of Opossum Road and watch a green arrow for people to turn into the Wynn Studios when there's no cars. So perhaps the General Manager...
General Manager Everhart.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm unfortunately unable to answer that off the top of my head, but I can come back with that.
Yep. Appreciate that. Anything further, Councillor Harris? No, Councillor Gibson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks very much for the detail that's provided in the report. I just thought that it was interesting that as a document that exists at a certain point in time, that there really is no narration to talk of the innovation and the response and things that have proactively been happening. So without the narration provided by the CEO and the General Manager, Louise, if you were to pick up this particular document, you could basically see that a whole range of things had stopped or been deferred due to COVID, and I'm sure that work has indeed still been continuing. So just a note, I guess, that Louise and Michael have provided a narration to say that innovative, responsive, timely things have indeed been happening. It isn't that in all of these focus areas work has stopped and staff have indeed been doing, you know, the resource allocated to these tasks have been doing nothing. So I just wanted to point that out, and maybe, you know, the next report, which no doubt will also have impacts of COVID, there should be an overarching comment that talks about us being a flexible, nimble, responsive, innovative organisation that is still continuing to do work even outside these parameters and key strategies.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak?
I've got my hand up, Mayor. Still, I thought I'd just have a brush.
You've spoken, so you've
mine's a question. Mine's a question still.
Oh, question still?
Yep.
You may ask a question.
Sorry, just my only other question I had was just in regard to the commentary regarding St John Street, which just refers back to the comments about not borrowing money under the interest-free loan basis from the government. It says work is nearing completion on the identification of future arrangements of relocating the bus interchange from St John Street. Once complete, St John Street redevelopment plan will be reviewed and refined, with work expected to commence on the redevelopment in 2020. Is that therefore, I guess we're looking to source funds from other places other than necessarily the loan funds from the state government, or will that maybe come back on the table once we've got to that stage?
CEO?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, you recall we have federal and state funding provided for that project. We just haven't been able to utilise it, and obviously we've been working with both levels around maintaining that funding available to us. So the interest-free loan was there to assist us to provide our contribution to the project. So we do need to sit down now that we're starting to have some more certainty around the direction of the City Heart project, and then look at where we can use that funding, or whether we do need to access that interest-free loan funding as you've suggested. So,
okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. You wish to close?
No, Mayor.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against?
Aye.
No no's. That's carried. Thank you very much. 20.1, the Accelerated Capital Works Program.
Happy to move that, Mayor.
Councillor Finlay.
Happy to second that.
So who was that? Happy? Second, Dawkins, was it? Yep, Councillor Dawkins. Yep. Thank you. Councillor Finlay, you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mayor. And in addition to the comments that are made on a previous item in regards to our financial position, I think it's really important, prior to any comments on this particular program, to recognise the work that our CEO, our general managers and the whole organisation have done over recent years to put our organisation in a strong financial position. And on top of that, with the development of our long-term financial plan and our strategic management asset plan that we have completed recently, we're able to approach this Accelerated Capital Works program and do it in a really diligent way and in a way that we understand where we are as an organisation. So I want to acknowledge that first. to be in a position as a local government organisation to support the community across a whole range of sectors by accelerating our capital works, I think is really important. It's a role that we can play as local government in the partnered approach to what's going to be a really long-term and tough recovery and rebuilding in the years ahead. So to be able to bring forward twice as much planning and design work in half the amount of time and get it to market with the first section out by December and the following out by April is going to be really important across whether it be professional services, whether it be construction or manufacturing, and play a really significant role not only in the projects but really delivering confidence across the community. It's really important in the paper. It outlines the difference for us as an organisation. We acknowledge the difference between our renewal works and our new works, and we have acknowledged previously the backlog of renewal works that we have. So to be able to focus on projects that when we assess them through, the condition they're in, the age that they're in, the useful life that they've got, and be able to focus on that through this program, I think is really important. Acknowledging that this doesn't address any new assets, in the recognition that new assets apply a load to the organisation financially, and where we've been diligent in advance but then follow-up required to have a zero rate increase, we don't want to apply that load to our community that are going to be finding it tough over future years ahead. So I completely support this program. I want to acknowledge the work of the CEO and our general managers, our entire organisation, to get us to the position where we're able to do this so responsibly. And subject to the policy being adopted in the following item, that focuses on an 80% of asset renewal. It will deliver works across transportation, drainage, recreation, building, waste management. I think it's a really positive thing that the City of Launceston can do in the local government sector to support the rebuilding in Northern Tasmania. So I commend this item to Council today.
Thank you. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, likewise. We've seen 5 years-led economic recovery plans before, and they're very good. That's why we keep doing them, because they have got success. But look, I guess there's always a concern for me when we listen to the federal government this week talk about the Job Maker program, which is something that clearly is going to get a lot of support, and then we hear today in the news emails coming around from TasTAFE that courses that have gone online are staying online. So for me, these kind of economic activities need that deep support of all of the ecosystems that support them. And right now, TasTAFE, even though I know we received a briefing recently, which was to instill confidence in us that our training for these kind of jobs is taken care of. I think that claim today that TasTAFE, a lot of TasTAFE staff potentially will lose their jobs, and hearing someone like Dale Elphinston talk about his concerns about the future of his industry regarding training is something that it doesn't seem to go away. So whilst I absolutely endorse the comments of Councillor Finlay, I'd be very, very interested to see over the next couple of years if we can continue to lead with this high-vis kind of economic recovery without the support of apprentices, which are absolutely instrumental to the success of this program. We do not want to bring people in from outside of Tasmania. We want people to be able to get good, excellent jobs that give them a lifetime, can pay a mortgage, can support their families. And to do that, we need these kind of activities from local councils, but we need every level of government to understand that in order for this to succeed, we need to be able to train our young people into these jobs.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie. You're unmuted, Councillor Mackenzie.
I hit the wrong button. I took my hand down rather than the muting button. Look, I'd just like to commend the report that's been put together and the general manager and the CEO and the team around it. When I first joined council a few years ago, I was critical of a number of projects that we did which focused on the capital spend but didn't necessarily focus on the ongoing recurrent expenditure associated with the capex that we spend. And I think that clearly in taking the position that we have with renewal, there are two aspects to that. One it takes out some costs that we're currently spending now because we're renewing an asset, which will reduce some of the maintenance requirements on an older asset, and therefore not bringing a new item into being, and therefore not substantially changing the ongoing costs of the council. So I think it's been a very smart, strategic way of doing it to actually improve, get capital spent, but not overly burden the council going forward with long-term ongoing costs to maintain the assets that we're talking about, because we're sensibly just bringing assets back into a state that was better than they were before. So, well done.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak?
Councillor Soward.
Councillor Soward, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, look, I just wanted to echo and agree with the comments of the three previous speakers, particularly Councillor Dawkins's remarks around the trades. For as long as I've been on council, and probably before, I hear all the time we have issues around tradespeople and shortages and all the rest of it, and nothing seems to change. I think we're at a point now where less than half of apprenticeships that are undertaken are completed. That's been the case for a while, and that's significant. I'm going to add to the discussion, not repeat what's been said, because I do agree with everything that's been said. For me, Mr Mayor, a really excitement thing for this is by bringing our works forward, we're playing a major role in helping to kickstart things within the economy. And we know that with capital works, some out there would say, oh, well, you know, there's no benefit for me, I'm not a tradie. But we know with the flow on of things around a whole heap of things in our economy, the impact's huge. The ripple effect, it's like throwing a stone in a pond. So, yep, if we're doing some capital work and obviously the firms involved are benefiting, those firms aren't just names on a piece of paper, they're made up of people. They're people that spend money in our economy. They're people that have children that go to school. They have things that they do, restaurants they go to, supermarkets they go to. I mean, I'm not going to list every single commercial activity there is, but the impact is huge. We know that, and by bringing forward what we're going to do, we're helping to play a little part, or a big part, as a major business in our economy, and I don't think that should be underestimated. One thing that I would say, Mr Mayor, and in listening to the news this morning, as I'm sure all councillors did, other councils are doing a similar thing. The state government, in their own way, are also doing a similar thing, and we know the federal government will also be doing a similar thing. One of the things that I think is really, really important in this, and we've seen through something like the City deal, where state, federal and local government work together, we don't want a situation of where all three of us are trying to create a stimulus, which we all will do, and then we find that there's this massive boom or bust thing in the economy where every tradesperson under the sun will be on a job today, but in 6 months' time, the work's not there. Having spoken to tradespeople before who tender for work at state government level, they've indicated a frustration where three major projects might all be slated to be on at the same time, so they have to pick one of the three. And if they don't get that one, they don't get any work. So what I'm talking about is just an organisational thing. So it's great what we're doing. I think it's wonderful, but we also need to be conscious. We need to provide a plan. We need to be able to provide circumstances, I should say, where those who tender for this work can plan their way forward, because, again, as tradespeople do, if they know that there's a program of work available for the next couple of years, that inspires them to put on an apprentice. That inspires them to hire people because they know they have work for them. I just also want to add my voice to the work, the leadership of our CEO and the general managers in making this happen. It's very exciting. We're doing our bit, and I look forward to seeing the program roll out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer.
Thanks, Mayor. Totally agree with Councillor Sauer, what he's saying about apprentices, saying it's the last two speakers. I just want to ask a question. How many apprentices would the council actually employ and put on every year?
Short answer would be not enough. We have quite a few trainees that are employed, and certainly we would like to see more apprentices. be employed, and it's something as an executive team we have been looking at. But I couldn't answer the question off the top of my head, but I can certainly provide you with some information to the council on the current number of trainees and apprentices we have in the bulletin, perhaps.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'd like us to set an example. We could start putting, a couple of extra ones on, or half a dozen extra ones in every department, really. So I think it'd be a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Councillor Dakin.
Councillor Dakin, yes.
Thank you. Look, again, I agree with all the speakers. I think it's a great reinvestment of our funds moving forward. Shows great foresight in our thinking. I think it's something we could also look at in the future, post-COVID, with these renewals and the projects. And I completely agree with Councillor Dawkins in regards to the apprentices across all sectors, all industries. I know especially in the hospitality industry, we need to get industry and the educational bodies like TAFE together, working together to create and hopefully encourage more apprentices into the system. But other than that, I can fully support the recommendation with the Capital Works program.
Thank you. No other speakers? Councillor Finlay, you wish to close?
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to acknowledge all of the positive contributions from the councillors. I think in particular, as Councillor Dakin and Dawkins have mentioned, followed up with Councillor Soward, this relationship, these partnerships with training bodies that are providing trades, apprenticeships, traineeships into the ecosystem where we can develop certainty with being able to deliver on these projects is going to be really important. And I think if ever before there's been an opportunity for TAFE and other providers to step up and meet that demand and work with industry in a way that's really clearly understood what the requirements are and how it needs to be delivered is going to be really important. I think that while we're accelerating the Capital Works program now, and we're working at the design and the element of getting it out fast, it does identify in the paper that the construction will happen over the following 5 years. So as Councillor Soward identified, what we don't want across the state of Tasmania is not having local contractors being able to deliver and benefit from these works. So being able to plan and work in partnership to ensure that we can deliver with the most possible Tasmanians getting the benefit from these works will be really important. And the direct benefits going to the professional services, to construction and manufacturing, but as Councillor Soward said, those flow-on benefits with that cash generation in the economy and then going out into retail spend and other spend is going to be really important in terms of supporting small business, in terms of supporting family and community. So I commend this motion to Council today.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any against? So the ayes have it. That is carried. Thank you. 20.2, Accelerated Capital Works Program Policy.
Happy to move that as well, Mayor.
Councillor Finlay moved. Is there a seconder?
Happy to second, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Finlay, wish to speak to it?
As far as policies goes, it's very short and to the point and clear in terms of what the expectations are that will be delivered by this policy, but important to have that guidance for the organisation. Commend it for approval.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, nothing further to add other than that some of the narration that came from previous speakers on the previous item certainly sit well alongside the policy and the implementation of same.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak? Oh, Councillor Harris. Yep.
Yep. Just got a question. In regard to, the expenditure by program should be in line with the long-term finance plan with 80% of asset renewal and 20% of new stuff, I guess. And I'm looking at the split up between transportation, recreation, buildings, and I just wonder what the ability for us to have input into those new things that will be built under this asset, under the new expenditure rather than the renewal, how we will do that and when our opportunity will be to be part of that.
CEO or General Manager?
The General Manager is happy to answer that,
Good.
Mayor.
Thank you, Shane.
I guess renewal is replacement of an existing asset. When we replace existing assets, there's many assets that need to be upgraded as part of that to comply with current legislation and requirements. So, and I guess that's the 20%. It's the new that makes up the upgrade. So if we upgrade a accessible toilet, for example, the standards when it was first built 10 years ago have completely shifted. So the 20%, there's probably limited scope for projects that are fully new infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak or ask questions? All done. Councillor Finlay, wish to close?
Only as previous councillors had done in the previous item to acknowledge the work of the General Manager here, Shane, his team, and how it fits into all the other work. I think we're in a great place as a council to have been able to bring this forward in such a timely way, and thank Shane and the team for doing that.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye.
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 Any against? Say no. No. So it's all saying aye. That is carried unanimously. And then we close the meeting. Thank you very much for your patience, and I think we've worked through it very well. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Pause during breaks.